o'clock. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Roberta Garlock.
Here.
Arthur Gilbert.
Here.
Bridget Hosky. Here. Stephen Idarola is absent. Stephen Johnstone is absent. Tony Mancini.
Here.
Gail Tagliatella. Here. Leilani Perry.
Here.
And Chairman Arthur Kelly.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I know everyone was sent the meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve unless there's any revisions to it that somebody sees.
Can you just put your mic on? Thank you.
For me, where it says I asked if there would be financial savings, I would kind of prefer if it was just saying that I was attempting to clarify the statement that there would be savings if we went to a 4-year term. So I was asking for data, if anyone had data to support their statement. Please.
This is on the second page, number 5.
I will
You'll take
revise
care
them.
of
Yeah,
it.
we're just going to make when we make the motion, it'll be two as revised.
Yep.
So, under my comments, halfway down the paragraph, it says, approval authority should be with the city council for contracts over $100,000. Then it says, should mandated positions in the charter. I think the intent was should not mandate positions in the charter.
Add in the word not.
Yep.
Adding the word not.
And
yes.
change mandated to mandate, not
Should
mandate
not
position.
mandate.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any other changes? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve with revisions. Second, we have a second. We have a
First by
Mr.
Art
Gilbert.
Second by Leilani.
All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our discussion period. I had put together a list of 23 different things that I got from the comments. I did not match them up with the meeting minutes. It was, again, to try and help organize things in our mind. If anybody else has anything to add to it, feel free. But I think tonight we want to start going through and seeing. First, I would think the first thing would be is what is charter worthy? Does it or should it be dealt with in the charter? That's the first thing we should do, I think, with any of these or any of the suggestions from the meeting minutes. Including the public hearing, yeah. Yeah.
Yep, so
I
just have to ask if we're going to speak, we need to put the microphones on only because if you're not speaking into it, it doesn't pick up anything. Thank you.
send that down to Steve. Oh, you. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's all right. And again, as I stated in my email when I sent this out, I can't attest to it being complete or accurate, but I wanted to get going and again, have us start wrapping our head around things to move along. So once we get copies, then we'll start discussing.
And Art, to the extent that it's helpful, I'm happy to take all of the notes that were received from the public hearing and everything that has been sent, and again, just put it into AI to summarize what are the themes that we're hearing from everyone, if that's helpful.
Yes, it would be very helpful. I didn't think of that. Thank you, Kevin. I'm all set, yeah. So we'll give Steve you a minute to just quickly look at it. And okay, I would like to direct your attention to number 23, the suggestions from Councilman Meg about the youth and animal commissions. That does not have to be in the charter, from my understanding. The council can do that with an ordinance, so we can take that right off the list. Kevin, I just said
Chairman,
that.
I would
23.
ask that we
Yeah.
not take it off until we send something to the city council, with respectfully, that we send something requesting that they do this so that the councilwoman knows that,
That she can do it.
right, for transparency, just that we're going to send a letter requesting that they
Well,
work
we'll
on this.
let them know why we're not dealing with it and that they can create it themselves with an ordinance.
What you can do when you do your draft report on the draft charter, you can say we did not consider this item for charter revision because it's an item that can be handled by ordinance,
Mhm.
and leave it to the council to make that decision. So you can do that in your transmittal letter. So you're not ignoring the issue; you're addressing it at that time.
Okay. All right. I'd like to go up to the top. I think we all know the first one, change the mayor from 2 to 4 years, is an item that we're going to discuss and possibly change or vote on whether we're going to change it. I would say the city clerk, tax collector, for elected officials, same thing.
So are we making a motion to vote on that?
Well, right now,
Okay.
we're just going through and saying, yes, these are the ones that we're going to look to revise in the charter.
And the treasurer's just not listed. It was my understanding, Chairman, that we were looking to have the tax collector be in an appointed position. I thought that was what was the suggestion. I
Yeah,
could
let me
be
shed some
wrong.
light on that for all of you.
Okay.
If you look on this list that I've just provided, to your point, treasurer language is addressed by number 18 But as you see 19, it says same for tax collector. So 18 and 19 are read together. Essentially, review and revise language indicating that which the city is mandated to do under the charter for tax collector. Now, if you take 19 and 2 together, you're really asking yourself to deal with two different questions around tax collector, which I think can be reduced to one. How should the charter deal with tax collector? Right now, what the city has is essentially a ceremonial tax collector in name. Right now, it's Eric Murillo. He is named often in correspondence, even lawsuits that are sent to the city, because public facing, he's listed as a tax collector. For effective purposes, we have a tax manager that does the job that tax collector does in some other municipalities. So there's a number of different ways that you can deal with it, but right now you have a tax collector that doesn't do a whole lot. And I think the question that you're asking of yourselves is, what should we do about the language in the charter if it speaks to tax collector? I'm putting air quotes around that, but the tax collector's job is being done by another department. So you can revise and review the language, you can eliminate the position, you can rename the position, all of those things. But I think you'd want to deal with that first before determining if it should be a 2-year term at election, a 4-year term at election, really any term at election, if you decide to eliminate it and make it an appointed position as the tax manager is now.
Yeah. Again, these aren't in any kind of order.
As a former tax collector, I really think if you have an appointed tax collector, you don't really need that position as an elected individual. It's just an extra position to put on a ticket, really is what it boils down to. So I don't really think you need it.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so number 3, the special election provisions for mayor vacancy. Again, Chairman Ron Quagliani, former chairman, suggested that we look at that language. So I would say that's number 3. I think Chairman Chris Vargo mentioned funding, or the mayor mentioned funding in line with state budgeting. Kevin, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I'm still trying to make sure I understand what number 4 is asking. The line there after says feasible, meaning is it feasible? Feasible
Yeah,
to get
that
funding
was my
in
that was
line
my
with state
question.
budgeting? Just before you all were seated, Attorney Mednick and I spent some time putting together what was a charter amendment, which is different from charter revision, but we were amending the portion of the charter that deals specifically with the timing and the date requirements around departments delivering their requests to the administration putting together the budget that goes into this room for the council to review. We shoved, to use a blunt word, all of those dates really as far as we could to allow for two things. One, as much information to come from the state as is possible. But 2, enough time for the tax department to get done what they need to do, which is to get the bills out. That's the one thing that we really, A, are in control of, and B, cannot miss. And so if number 4 is asking of something different, then we can all look at that. But if it's asking about that specifically, the city council just took that issue up and did move those dates. But you won't see that reflected in some of the information you've seen, because I don't know if the charter itself that you've all been printed and delivered has had those new dates put in. So that might be why that question's there.
It sounds like we don't have to deal with it.
Well, that's 100 words for me to really say 10, right? Which is I'll talk to Chris and find out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just noticed that the charter they handed out is probably printed off of your website. We should, when we start drafting, you'll be working with a document that has the updates on the budget process.
Yes, let me just say, to the extent that you all do research in your off time and are spending time with our lovely charter, the one that you find on eCode 360, that's a company that provides that service, but that is not as up to date as we are here after doing business in the city with City Council. So if we touch on anything that has been addressed recently, I can get all of you that fresh new language, including what I think should address number 4.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chairman, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead. No. feel free.
I think one of the things Chris Vargo spoke to that I couldn't agree with more is that if the city council does not come to an agreement and vote to pass the budget, that the mayor's budget goes in by default, and he wanted us to, which I agree, something else should occur. It shouldn't. The mayor's budget shouldn't just go in by default. And my question would be, what are the options? Because there is a due date.
Yeah.
You know, what do other towns do if something like that happens?
I'll just speak very briefly to it and then let Attorney Bendick tell you what other towns do, because he's instrumental in crafting the language about what those other towns do. In fact, helping us decide what we do. Right now, as you say, if the body that regularly meets in this room, council, is unable to reach a decision on the budget, then, because of time constraints, the budget as proposed is deemed adopted. I think Mr. Vargo asked for you all to come up with something that might be an alternative. I don't know if he suggested an alternative to any of you. I didn't hear one. So to that point, I'll pitch it to Attorney Bendick, who might have some ideas of what other towns have done.
Many towns do have, but it sounds like you already have it, a provision that basically says if the council does not act on the budget by a date certain, by the terminus date, the mayor's budget as proposed is the default. And if that's what you already have, I'll take a look at the language and see if it can be tightened up anymore. But that would be sufficient.
We don't like that. We want that to be gone.
You want that gone?
What would
So
you,
Yeah,
what would you like to
what's
see
the
in its place,
alternative?
though?
Yeah.
That's what we're asking you. What do other towns do? Or do other towns all say that if the city council cannot come to an agreement on an amended budget, that the mayor's budget just always goes in by default? There's
Most
no-
of the larger cities do. The smaller towns, the RTM towns, the town meeting towns, will kick it to a referendum. That's why you see in the newspapers periodically, the town of East Windsor is on its 3rd referendum, and we're now in August, and you don't have a budget. But most of the larger cities have a tight deadline. To go back to the point that the Corp Council was talking about earlier today, it's awfully hard to align the local budget process with the state process because you have 2 different end dates for the legislative session. And so it's almost impossible to do it. We really pushed it as hard as we could with the amendment that we made last month. But it's pretty standard for a default to be in place if the council cannot get its act together and adopt a budget.
Could I ask another question? So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free.
So, are there any towns that might say that there couldn't be 2 budgets that are automatically, because the city council can't come to an agreement, like 2 years in a row, that can't happen, so the second year would have to go to a referendum?
I've not seen that in any town where you have something like that. The regular order is the mayor proposes the budget. There's a time frame for the council to approve the budget. There's usually a veto and an override period. Then some towns have, and I think you have it as well, a referendum that people can call on ordinances or budgets. But when you start going into that territory, it's at the end of the process. So you're going to be kicking yourself into the new fiscal year in all likelihood. So I think most of the larger cities where you have representative democratic governments try to make sure that the business is conducted within this room and that room between the mayor and the council. So I don't think, I look, but I don't think I'll find anything that has a penalty if the penalty for councils that don't get their job done is to not get reelected. I think that's the theory of the case in representative democracy. But I will take a look.
Okay. Yeah.
The one thing about that is that if you run into a time frame problem, it has to go through. You have to get your tax bills out. You have to raise money. And if you continue to delay that process, the interest rates, everything goes crazy within the tax office. So I think it's fine the way it is, my opinion.
If I can say something, we did an amendment in Hamden last year, the similar amendment that we did here. I think, I don't want to say that one of my clients is irresponsible and the other is not, but we pushed it very, very far into June with the theory of let's make sure we have everything that we can with the end of the June session of the legislature. Now, keep in mind, even the legislature sometimes doesn't meet its deadline. There have been budgets approved by the legislature in July or August. And what do you do in that kind of year? You're never going to have complete information. Budgets are always estimates. They're always going to be estimates. There's no way around it. The only time you have certainty in the budget is when you get the audit report and they tell you what the budget did a year later. And so in Hamden, they pushed it really hard, deeper into the month of June. They talked to their tax collector to get a determination about how much time they needed. I think there was a miscalculation. Taxes did not go out until mid-July, really the beginning of August, and they had to float loans to get through the first couple of months of the fiscal year. That's not a place you want to be if you can avoid it.
Okay. So, again, we can vote on it as a commission as to whether we consider doing that or not. If you would like to, you can make a motion.
I wasn't in support or not in support of it. I mean, if there is no other recourse that we could do, because I don't want to, I just wanted to make sure, just identify if there were other options that we could choose from. But since there isn't, I believe what we have is the best course of action. So I would not make a move.
Thank you. Then I'm going to, and that's item number 10. I'm going to put a line through that. And we can, again, like 23, we can deal with it in the report.
Yeah, and to the point of that line item number 10, but any of those others that you have on the list, it's one thing to suggest that as it exists, it whatever the charter provision is insufficient or outdated or should be stricken. That's fine. You have to look very closely if you're going to strike something without a replacement. In this case, I think you need a replacement. Now, in some of them, you may not. But I would suggest, don't just vote to get rid of something before you look to see what's the downstream effect of getting rid of it. Is this something that we need to have a replacement with? If you send the report that says get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, that's okay. But some of them may need also and replace with this. And that's one of Attorney Mednick's specialties, is getting into the weeds of understanding the language that needs to be separated and distinguished from one thing so that we can see when this gets presented to council what they're going to be operating under if they accept those recommendations that come from that report.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Number 5, language for council approval of certain contracts. That was your recommendation, Ron, and I think the mayor's also. I think there was a dollar amount involved. Do I remember seeing 100,000
50,000
from your comments?
I just want to make sure, so Attorney Cassini and Mednick, so I'm the council liaison here, so I just want to understand what my rules of engagement are, so not to sway, unintentionally sway the body one way or another.
You can answer questions. You can provide information. You can't vote on things. So it's a perfectly. I'll defer to the Corporation Council, but council liaisons are used as resources to talk about the practical effects of things, how it's done at the council, what kind of receptivity there might be at the council, that kind of stuff. You can certainly have those.
And for our purposes, you're going to help us grease the skids on this to save time on a back and forth between what would and what wouldn't be a balloon that floats, so to speak, if I can throw as many metaphors at you as possible. So I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the sensitivity towards it. I don't think we're even close to something that would be improper with your answering questions.
All right, thank you. So the answer to the question was $100,000 and or 3 years, as far as contracts go, and any executive level appointment contract would need to go to the city council for approval.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I just say, thresholds are fine. If you'll make it $100,000, that's certainly fine. But with regard to anything that goes over 1 year, all contracts over 1 year have to go to the council. It's just the common law in the state of Connecticut is that the council is the one that establishes the contracts. You can do some delegation, some level of delegation. I'd have to take a look at whether or not, if you want to move to a 3-year model, but the council should know that the current common law in the state is anything that's more than a year is has to go to the council. And I want to raise it for this reason as well. I know we're going to be dealing with language in the next one, dealing with the Board of Ed as a city department. One of the problems that we see throughout the state of Connecticut is that boards of ed play a lot of games with contracts. Boards of ed have independent power, independent line item authority. They have delegated power from the state on line item authority on their budget. So the council, this group here, cannot change the line items in their budget. And there's other restrictions as well. They also get to approve the superintendent's contract. That's by state law. So we can't mandate that the superintendent's contract come to the city council. But they have no authority. They have no capital budget authority at all. That's all the mayor and the council. But they have no authority to do multi-year contracts. One of the tricks that they pull at boards of ed, I don't know, I'm not talking about the West Haven Board of Ed. I don't have any direct experience with it, but I see from some of the smiles around the room that they may be anticipating what I'm going to say, is they do what look like 1-year contracts, but they put options in them. And if you have an option in a contract, it's not a 1-year contract anymore. It's a multi-year contract. What they're doing is they're in effect exercising their authority or their power. It's no authority. Their power to commit to multi-year contracts. And nothing wrong with a multi-year contract, frankly. But a multi-year contract would have to be approved by the council, even if it's a Board of Ed matter, on a line item that they have control over, but they don't have control over the line item next year or the year after until you approve their budget. So I want to be cautious about putting any kind of caps on that so we can consider the issue in tandem, because I think that that's one of the issues that I understand that the mayor has as a priority item to try to maintain some kind of control over the Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
When we think about the contracts that have to be approved, I don't want to just limit it to the Board of Ed. I think the same, and I think Councilman Quagliani may have spoken to this, but I and myself believe that the library and their contracts, I think the City Council should be looking at those as well. Right now, the library can unilaterally decide on labor relation contracts and give everyone a 10% raise. And once they sign that, they then bring it back to the council, and it's, you got to budget us for this because we've already just approved it.
Mm.
So I think that, I know a lot of the, I know that, you know, the library is, I don't know what page in the charter they're in, and they are separate, but they are funded by us.
Yeah.
So I think that the charter should just say all. I think $100,000 is a really big amount. Is more than I'm comfortable with. I think it should be a little bit less that they should have eyes on, because you sign two $90,000 contracts without city council approval. That's a lot of money.
We have line item 20, library submit audit and budgetary procedures. I think we can discuss that. As far as number 5 goes, it sounds like we definitely want to make it an item for continued discussion.
And that would apply to Board of Ed as a department of the city. That would apply to the library as a
Right.
department
Yes.
of the city. That would apply to All business that happens by and through the city,
Correct.
including those two.
Do you think, I just want to, is $100,000 standard in that?
There's
or-
no standard. It's really, it's not an unusual number. Your budget's pretty high, pretty substantial budget, but it can be really whatever you want it to be. But it's not a high number. Smaller towns, I'm going through this right now in Weston, they have 50,000, but that's a very small town in terms of what their overall budget is. So it's not I didn't wince at the 100,000. I winced a little bit at the 3 years. I didn't physically wince, but in my mind I winced. And so the other thing that goes in tandem with this, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, is that I'd like to ask you to consider, as we look at the contract issue, a more robust a definition of what a contract is. You want to capture any consensual agreement that is made between the city and a third party. Now, collective bargaining is governed by state statute, so I'm not really talking about that. You have to approve that at the council level anyhow, and there's very little we can do to change that. But I usually put a definition of contract in the charter, and it's mainly dealing with that body out there that's elected but doesn't have any tax obligations or tax revenue raising obligations. And that is a common theme throughout the state where we've done that. I've fought it in a lot of places, and boards of ed have had to acquiesce because the case law is very clear that they're a department of the city and that they have to abide by the procedures that the city establishes. And so, I will ask, as we go through this process, for your consideration of a definition for the word contract to cover
Okay.
all that territory.
Certainly. Number 6, define and strike the language for Board of Ed. That's all going to be part of the same discussion as far as how do we strengthen up the procedures for departments and their budgetary procedures, what have you.
Yeah, there may be other issues specific to some departments as we go through that will be captured only in their section, but there will be some language that I think you'll want to consider that will be applied to all departments. And in doing so, you can deal with all of those departments in those ways much more efficiently and quickly by just having the charter reflect generally this is how all departments need to behave, so to speak.
So 6, 7, and 8, I'm going to mark it as item number 5. That's going to continue discussion on. 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay, good. I was going to ask a question about 8.
Yes.
Mike, if we're there, can somebody explain what that means?
I believe the mayor brought it up, and she felt that all departments need to engage a legal professional for finalizing contracts, labor contracts.
Yeah, I can speak for her a bit around the context. Some departments have more experience and expertise with labor relations if they're engaging unions, but also just with the human resources and personnel aspects of hiring, policy, how to interview, how not to interview, perhaps. And so we are interested in just making this uniform and having everyone follow not only proper procedure, but the same proper procedure. And in doing so, whether that's operating through my office or the personnel director, or if they would like to, engaging some type of outside counsel that can give advice, again, through or at the direction of my office, that's probably the best way to at least get off on the right foot so that everybody understands the rules of engagement when you're dealing in hiring. Sometimes you've got to deal in discipline in some way or another. And as you see, as we talk about it tonight, some departments operate a little bit more autonomously than others do, have historically. We're not necessarily trying to take away that agency and those freedoms. We're just trying to make sure that whoever it is that's responsible for, in this case, dealing with personnel, hiring, labor, that they're all doing it with the understanding of what the rules of engagement are right now.
Thank you.
If I may, when I became corporation counsel in New Haven many, many years ago, we had a situation where there was a lot of, how shall I put, segmented behavior with regard to collective bargaining agreements. And one of the things I insisted when Mayor DeStefano came into office and I came into office with him was that I, as Corp Counsel, become the centralized hub for all labor matters, collective bargaining. We had workers' comp in there for a while, labor relations in there for a while, because they all have legal implications. And I'm not saying the Corp Counsel becomes the labor relations director or the workers' comp director, but that the Corp Counsel is the chief. And we've not talked about this. So I hope I'm not putting a burden on the Corp Counsel, but the Corp Counsel is the corporate attorney and represents the entire community. When the Board of Education ends up with a slip and fall case, it's a case against the city of West Haven. And so while it's very hard to get control and they have their own attorneys, it's important to establish the principle that this is one corporation, it's one municipal corporation, and whether it's for this or for contracts in general, I think it's important. So I do understand what they're trying to do, and I think there's ways we can address that.
Okay. So, number 9, take out the voting to be done by machines. Again, that's simple. I'm going to make that number 6. That's, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there's a section of your charter that simply has that language, that voting shall be done by machine, and I think there's just a way to tie it directly to whatever the state statutory language is and kind of be done with it.
Right.
The state controls the field there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we already hit on 10. Number 11, modernize civil preparedness, define participants. I think she was talking about emergency management. So we would probably look to you as to how we would do that.
Yeah, myself and Mr. Fontana, whom I think all of you know, very familiar with this. There is some language already in his department that will simply get your language here in this charter in line with language that reflects, rather than using the terms that it's using now, the emergency management language around civil preparedness. There's also some other things to do to update the actual effectiveness of it. This is something that Mr. Fontana is very familiar with and did a lot of in New Haven. I should say, if you're getting state and federal money around this, there are requirements that you adhere to their statutes, so we might as well adhere to their language as well. It's a very easy way for people to check to see if West Haven is doing what they're supposed to be doing. We reflect all of your language directly, so you don't even really have to ask any questions.
Thank you. So we're going to make that number 7. That we'll continue to discuss. Change some titles and clean up language. Again, it's, I guess, going to be part of an overall cleanup discussion. Revise public health for regionalization. Kevin and I talked about that. You want to hit on that one?
Yeah, I looked into that at the chair's request, but also at the Department of Health's request. My view on this list was how many of these things, if people want them done, can be done without tasking you all with changing the charter to do them. That one does not need necessarily a charter change. There's no outward bar in the charter for doing so. However, there are some requirements of it that don't reflect the latest language that's in state statute. So it would be amending and modernizing the language in there if that's something that the city decides that they want to do, just to smooth things and make it be an easier process. Of course, if you're regionalizing, that means you're partnering with other neighboring municipalities, and to the extent that our language here will be different than theirs, that could be an unnecessary roadblock.
You could also, in tandem with that, I've put interlocal compact and agreement language in a lot of charters that give you the ability to enter into regional arrangements, even though the charter mandates a local matter, as long as you're meeting the local functions. So if you have a current local health department and you want to go into a regional health system, if you have the language on intergovernmental relations, you have that ability, the charter. So you do need to address it so the charter can trigger and allow you to do it if you're keeping the health department in there. And as long as you're meeting the function, you can do it. So there is language I'll talk to the Corporation Council about.
Okay, so I'm going to make 12 and 13 item number 8 to continue to discuss. Review finance director language, that's up in number 2. One of the fire commissioners asked about defining language for alternate commissioners. I don't feel that we need to deal with that in the charter, but I think that's something the commission can deal with. But Kevin or Steve, you can maybe tell us better.
Well, I can tell you my predecessor put together a legal report on that. I'm happy to review that and put it under or over my signature if that makes a difference. We can pass it around to that commission, to any of the commissions, to the city council. You all can take a look at it and see if that's something. I don't know if necessarily, to your point, this needs charter revision to get done. If it is something that either this body wants to review or the city council wants to review, either of you is free to take it up. It may be a blunt instrument to use the charter to get commission business done at this level.
In my mind, I mean, he was talking about, what authority the alternate commissioners would have. Again, I would assume if they're acting in the position of a regular commissioner, they're going to have the same authority and duties as the regular commissioner does.
Yeah, I'm happy to pass around the legal memorandum that Attorney Dorsey put together, dated September 10, 2024, for you to look at what the opinion of the office is, was, and is, and understanding that it would be unlikely that you would open up the charter, so to speak, to change the language for the fire commission without doing so as related to all commissions and all alternate commissioners.
Right. Thank you. 16, remove mandates that require a certain position. Same for 17, same for mandated departments. So I guess we have some positions and departments in the charter that either no longer are called that or have changed. And
yeah, I don't know if you've looked. Let me give you a couple of examples. There is a provision for adult daycare, which it's a department that the city doesn't have or operate, doesn't plan on having or operating. Likewise, there is a department here that really acts as others would call Health and Human Services or Public Services, but it's called the Human Resources Department. That, in recent parlance, is actually more of a personnel department label. So changing that, again, it's just a clerical and administrative change, but it might make things read a little bit easier. And to the extent that what we're trying to do is make this governing document more approachable to the electors, changing things so that it reads more easily is probably an easy way to do that.
okay. And again, for everybody, again, my list is not complete. If you feel I missed something or you need to add something, by all means, bring it up. So let's see. So I'm going to make that number 9 that we'll continue discussion on. Number 18 goes along with, I think, back with number 2, number 18 and 19. Discussion on the library audit and budgetary procedures. Again, that's all under the discussion of how do we strengthen the charter to make sure that the departments follow all the procedures necessary so that the city knows what's going on with their finances and stuff.
Chairman, can I ask a
Sure.
question?
Yep.
Thank you. So, I don't know that, I think the library is a department of the city. What are they considered? Because I know they're.
Well, I agree with you. I think it matters what the library thinks.
Well,
Do they think that they're a full-fledged department of the city? I think in some ways yes, and in some ways no. the goal in addressing this would be to make it more readily apparent exactly how they interact with the city and what controls, frankly, the city would have, over the purse strings, really. But we also talked about personnel. Management, of course, is left up to the managers at the department level, but hiring and firing, I only view things from my tiny little pulpit. But I will tell you, the way I've looked at this is, if one of these departments was subject to a lawsuit, who would end up getting that lawsuit served on them, and then who would be charged with the defense of that lawsuit? Ultimately, if that person or department or office was unsuccessful and lost, who would be responsible to pay the damages, right? Well, of course, the answer is the city would be named. It would land on my desk as corporation counsel, and it would come out of the budget to pay. So if those three are the answers, then I think the answer to the question, are they a department, it becomes pretty apparent. I don't know that everybody thinks of it in those terms. Not everybody sits at the desk that I sit at, so that you don't have to think of it in those terms. But to the extent that we have some departments that act differently than others, I think this is an opportunity to just be transparent and be overt about exactly what it is the electors expect of the departments of the city, including those that may be out of line. But it also gives the departments a chance to have the questions answered for themselves. Maybe it is unclear to them. Maybe they're not thinking of it in the terms that I am. And so this is a chance for, you sit here as constituted by the city council, but your very first meeting, and purposely so, was before any work was done to invite the public to tell you what they think should be done so that their government can work better for them, right? And then you're charged from that point forward to figure out what of those things you can do. And that's kind of the process that we're in right now. So to the extent that the people who live in this town, yourselves included, of course, and pay taxes in this town and vote in this town want all the departments to adhere to a certain set of standards, then if that's something that you choose to get done and think you can get done, I think you have all the power behind you to do that. And if that's the library, it's the library. And if that's the dog catchers, that's the dog catchers. And if it's me and my office, it's me, right? But that's what you're asked to do. So library or one of the fire districts, water pollution control authority, whatever it is, all the departments have to operate under the same rules of engagement with respect to budget, with respect to hiring, things like that.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I want to just speak on behalf of some current council and former council. So if you go to the actual paragraph that identifies the Village Improvement Association, it seems like the first part of the paragraph is contradictory to the second part of the paragraph, because the first part articulates that the Village Improvement Association shall run the library system, but then the second part then says that it should function like any other city department. So that's, I think, where the confusion is.
Ron, for the benefit of those that may not know as well as you do, where does the funding for the library come from? Do they operate their own? If they were sued, they have the ability to hire their own counsel. Do they discipline their own people? Do they set their own budget, or how does it work?
One last question. Do they have a board?
Yes,
Who appoints the board?
they do. So the only responsibility that the city council has is to fund them. They're probably funded 98% of their budget is from taxpayers through the city council. The other, right? They get it some smaller grants, but the 95 to 98% of that budget is city dollars. Yeah. No, it hasn't been that way. So I haven't been on the council. This will be the first time in 2 years. They'll be back in the budget cycle. But they have their own board. They hire their own people. They run the day-to-day operations of the library. But then the bottom of the paragraph says that the Village Improvement Association shall be considered the same as the other departments in the municipal government. So the two of them, those sentences are at odds to me.
If we could get our hands on that, I think, on behalf of the Corporation Council and myself, I think it would be very useful for us to.
Yeah, some of that language
Take
is
a
in the
look at it.
charter itself, and I think, Ron, what you're saying is that the first section has
Or
not
you-
just tension with the second section, but you can't find a way to read the two of them together.
Right.
So one of the foundational pillars of statutory construction, which is kind of what you're engaged in here, right? How to write regulations, ordinances, and laws, is that within an ordinance, all the passages, clauses, sentences have to be able to be read together in a coherent way. And then, of course, each of the ordinances has to be consistent with all the others. But in that one alone, in that section, I think you've pointed out the fact that it's kind of a heads and a tails, but not even of the same coin. They don't really work the same way together.
And what does it mean? Thank you, Mr. Corp Counsel, for referring me to the section, because I had no idea what the village, I was looking for the library. It continues to operate the public library in the same manner and under the same authority as heretofore. What is that? Is there a document that defines what that is?
You can't ask us what we're asking you.
Well, part of the lawyer's job is to ask questions when they don't have an answer.
Yeah.
And
So it's been like this for a long time. There was, the library is more adept at it than I certainly am. But there's some organizing document that goes back many, many years. It says that the Village Improvement Association will be the operators of the library. And I think at some point they mapped out where they would be less dependent or non-dependent on the city. But over the years, that piece never came to fruition.
I'll anticipate Attorney Mednick, who's going to ask me if I can get a copy of that so we can review that. So I'll ask somebody who to contact to get that.
yeah, that's number one. Number two, what I would recommend, because once you go through this list, you're going to now have to think about prioritization. What are we going to take first? What are we going to take second? This is a complex issue because it probably involves some outside agreement. We don't know where it was authorized. Did the General Assembly create it? Was it a special act? Where did this come from? Was it a private document? I've had libraries in a lot of different communities that are kind of quasi-public private. We've had battles in several communities about it, so it can be a very intense kind of thing. So I think it's one of the more complex issues, may not be that complex, but an issue that we don't know much about that we should probably deal with early, considering we don't have a lot of time. And the more time that the council and I have, the Corporation Council and I have, to take a look at it would be the better on a variety of functions, legally, so in terms of socialization, in terms of whether there's any possibility that there's political will to do something about this, and we're talking about a major change in culture for one of your entities in the city, and so we need to look at that as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and I think there's misunderstanding and confusion on both sides, right? With the Village Improvement Association and at least in the past with the council, right? So I think understanding how it was formed and what that process was supposed to be going forward and why we ended up where we did would be helpful, because we just see them come with it's like the Board of Ed. It's one no line items, just one number, right? And we don't really have any. We can either cut that number or raise the number or keep the number, but we can't so it doesn't function like a normal department where the council would typically go line item by line item.
Again, we have to see their governing document, their creating document. We know at the Board of Ed there's a statute that says you can't do that. The question I have is what legal authority do they have if they're taking your money for 98% of their budget, that you can't insist on them following your local procedures, or that you can't look at their lines. So I don't want to make any incendiary comments, but I think we need to see the incorporation documents, the establishment documents, in order to be able to give you some reasonable advice.
So I'm going to make that item number 10 for further discussion and research. 21, administrative remedies for not following the charter. Again, I think we're going to need some research on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Wouldn't that be the responsibility of the city council to make sure that they're administering to the charter?
Well, I believe one of the examples brought up was the Board of Ed. And how do they hold the Board of Ed accountable if they do not follow the charter? So I think, again, discussion on whether language can be put in as far as remedies, or what the mayor suggested, that you hold them accountable through the Ethics Commission. Those are all things that would have to be discussed. Does Kevin or Steve have any?
Well, let me just highlight that this is not specific to any one
Yes.
department, whether
Right.
it's Corporation Counsel's department or any others. This is rather what, if we're talking about carrots and sticks, this would be a stick. What stick does the charter offer to City Council to be able to hold someone accountable? Brief hypothetical: imagine a department that has not been forthcoming with the budget in a way that the City Council found to be helpful. Imagine a department that continually goes over budget without good explanation, and then comes forward again the next year. What, if anything, other than grilling questions, can the city do to make sure that those things don't happen again? There's not much we can do about looking backwards. Fixing your charter now is about looking forwards and making it, as Attorney Mednick calls it, able to be governed in real time. What can you do to get people to comply? But I would recommend we don't think of it in terms of how it might apply to one department versus another, because the idea is to fix this and kind of fix it for good. I mean, there will be another revision process, I'm sure, but this would apply to any and every department, and this really is more about what empowerments can we give the city to get everyone, again, to comply and conform to the same rules of engagement, right? So stepping outside of whether or not it's the dog catchers or the police or my department at all.
I always love when corporation councils quote me, but it's and I appreciate it. But I'll give you a real time example of this. Going through in one of my communities, we have a charter provision. It's clear. It's clear as Senator Irvin, who I used to work for, once said, "The noonday sun and the cloudless sky." It's a very clear provision that says you need to file monthly, pretty clear, transfer reports. There's transfer authority that department heads have, well, with certain constrictions, 25,000, I think, in this case. And the council wants to see on a monthly basis a transfer report. We have one department that has not filed transfer reports. I did not know that until recently, and I said, well, has anybody contacted them? Yes, we do. So what can we do? I said, you can pass an ordinance that has, under the state law, you have, it's a limited fine. It's $100. I don't know if it's $100 per infraction or $100 a day, but you do have penalties that you can impose upon people for their violations of ordinances or charter provisions. We're looking at that in real time right now. The other thing you can do is, if there's a board or commission that governs the body, and the department head is accountable or has a relationship with the board or commission, if the council or somebody, you could probably create an ordinance, and maybe the charter can talk about that. You might hold some of the members of the boards or commissions responsible, and it might be a ground for removal from a board or commission. Not electeds. Electeds are a different standard, but appointed boards or commissions, you might be able to make failure to follow the charter a ground for removal. You obviously still need to have a due process hearing and all those kinds of things, but there's things that can be done. But I'm just facing this where we have a very clear charter provision that's being violated, we think, willfully. And there's not even a willful standard. It just, you have to file it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So could that be an ordinance rather than an amendment to the charter?
What you may want to do in the charter, we'll have to take a look at it, but you may want to look and create the authority to establish the ordinance to do that.
I was on the Board of Ethics Commission. I still am. And I helped rewrite the Code of Ethics a few years ago, and everything that you just said falls under. So if somebody does something wrong, each employee, elected or appointed, they should all be filling out the new form. And everything that is on there, there's one for elected officials, appointments, and employees. Everything should be followed in there. And then if somebody does something wrong, then it goes, to the commission, the ethic commission, and they investigate everything. And then there's other steps, and there is fines in it. There are fines.
I have seen, I haven't looked at your ethics ordinance. I've seen ethics provisions and charters that have charter violations as something that's within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. The only concern I have about that is if you look at the statute that sets up ethics commissions, it talks about criminal activity, but mainly it's conflicts of interest, personal interest, financial interest, as you probably know. And so I haven't ever rendered an opinion on this, but I worry that adding charter violations to that list of things could be a problem because there may not be an underlying express grant of authority to do that. Because it's not technically a personal interest or a financial interest. It doesn't fall into that category, or corrupt practices. Maybe we can elevate it to a corrupt practice, but because those are the things that are permitted for ethics commissions. So that's my only cautionary point about specifically saying it should be the ethics commission. I think that probably needs a little more examination. If it's a removal, one of the charters, I'm actually literally working on it simultaneously with the little town of Weston, is we are working on removal provisions, and where there is an ethical matter, it goes to the Ethics Commission first, and then the Ethics Commission would make a determination to recommend to the council, in this case a board of selectmen, that they remove the official from the board or commission. But again, that mainly focuses on the ethics side, the conflict of interest side, not necessarily the charter violation side. So that requires a little more thought.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Let me say something generally that I had forgotten to bring up. We've been talking about things that can be dealt with from charter revision and things that might be dealt with at the city council level. But thank you for bringing that up, because there is an alternative. Things that are already dealt with that people just don't know are in the charter. Things that the city is already empowered to do that have been brought to your attention, or that you have come up with that you want to address, that actually are in the charter or active in the departments, or both. That may be one of them. I don't know exactly. Maybe it needs more language, or more toothy language, or a bigger stick, so to speak. But I had forgotten to bring that up as an alternative. There could be things that you think should be addressed that we look at the charter and realize, oh, this actually already is in there.
Thank you. So number 21 I have down as item number 11 to continue discussion on and research. Number 22, acting chair for council during absence. I don't feel that it's a charter revision item, but I think Chris Vargo brought it up that something's not clear with who acts as chair in the chair's absence. If the second person for the chair can't do it or something, how far down the line does it go? Again, I don't know if that's a charter item or not.
A lot of charters do deal with that. The charters deal with two things related to that. One is the line of succession. If the mayor leaves and the council president becomes the mayor, I don't know if that's the way it works in West Haven.
Yes.
Then the question is there an automatic succession to the chairmanship of the council? So you probably want to look at that just so you have kind of a fluid situation and you don't have a fight on the council in the middle of a session, in the middle of a term or whatever it may be, or just for a meeting for that matter, if there is need for clarity. So that's not an unusual provision to see in a charter, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then I'll make that item number 12 for further discussion. Yes.
While we're talking about the city council, is it safe to assume that when we're talking about number one, the mayoral term, we're going to be doing that in tandem with the
the city council? Because it was
Yes.
brought up
Yes,
by
we
several
are.
people.
Yep.
Okay, great,
Mm.
thank you.
I also talked to Kevin today about the reading of bond ordinances that I believe the mayor brought up, about the reading of them 3 times. Based on what Kevin looked at and I saw, we don't see 3 readings in there, correct?
Yeah, in fact, this is a change that we've put into play at the city council. I think we've only had 1 meeting since we all agreed, but the charter is specific to a second reading, but doesn't mention a third, and I think it's being read 3 times, so it doesn't need to be. I
Correct.
don't think the charter needs to be changed. I think the practice needs to be changed.
So, do you think you're talking about having it read once?
No, I think that to the extent that it's been read 3 times, which is where we're at, that doesn't need to happen.
That doesn't need to happen.
No.
Just the 2 times.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have to deal with that.
I don't think so. I think this is a matter of just educating people to make sure that they're doing only what is required. If they want to read it 10 times, I don't think you can stop them.
Yeah.
And the city council can't either. But if it only gets read 2, I think that's still compliant.
When you're talking about read, you mean literally reading the entire document?
Oh, yes, that's what I mean.
Oh, because my read of reading is like in New Haven. You probably know this.
Yes.
A reading means you have an item gets considered, placed on the agenda at 1 meeting, which is the first reading, not physically reading it, but it's on the agenda so the members of the council and the public can read the document, review the document, and then it can be considered at the next meeting, which is the quote, the second reading.
Right. No.
But you read it as literally reading the document.
I'm not sure that I read it that way, but that's how it's been done.
Wow. Okay. And there's also newspaper publication in this section. We probably want to do a definition on notice and eliminate newspaper publication.
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up that doesn't show on the list. Publication and notice practices. During the pandemic, there were executive orders flying around like crazy. Attorney Mendick knows this even better than I do. But keeping up with them was tough. But one of the things that we were happy the governor was able to do, this is when I was in an assistant corporation council in the city of New Haven, was allow people to post notice and make sure that everyone knew that electronic notification counts as publication for compliance with state law, with FOIA regulations and guidelines. You don't need to spend money on newspaper publication. Now, that isn't to say that some people, for purposes, don't want to spend money. If the constituency that needs to know about this thing doesn't get online often, if they do read the paper frequently, if that's where you can get the word best out, then that's a choice, but that's not a requirement. And so I think that's one of the things that we would want to put in there. It is a cost. Sometimes some of the Hearst publications can be extraordinarily costly. You're lucky in West Haven that you have an outlet that can work with you quickly and less expensively. That may not always be the case. With the consumption and conglomeration of media, I don't know how much longer that'll be an option. But online publication is satisfactory. And so I think we want to make that abundantly clear for everyone going forward.
I was going to say, I did take the summary of our notes and summarize them through AI, and I also took the charter as it exists right now and prompted to say, if we were to modernize this, what would you see as the key themes, the top things that we should look at to prioritize? And to your point, Council, one of the things that number 8 is to transparency and digital governance. So essentially reliance right now on outdated communication methods, and to have established the city website as the official publication platform, to live stream and archive the meetings, and to define digital records as the official records versus paper. So.
Which is consistent with FOIA. They
Yep.
permit all those things. Like, for example, you have to publish in a newspaper because the statute requires it. We've been trying to change that for years. And you're very lucky you have a local newspaper because Hearst really does put a gun to everybody's head. It's very, very expensive. And this charter, even if we don't do a lot of substantial structural things, just this list alone, folks, is going to be a really marked up document. And so it's going to probably be close to the whole charter that's going to be published at some point. And in my experience, Hearst will charge anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000 for something like that.
Yeah, at the end of this process, whatever the new one is, will have to be published in the old way. Can't get around that.
Can't
And
get around
that's
that.
a costly endeavor.
But we can control how we notice meetings and publish locally. If there's a state statute, that overrides. But and the notice definitions I usually write cover all of those things, and it's in the discretion of the town clerk, the city and town clerk, as to whether something should be published in the newspaper, and that's as it should be. If there's a constituency, senior like me, if the senior community insists that they read newspapers, they don't go online, and there are things that are dealing with their issues, let them petition, ask the clerk to make sure that things that are of interest to them get noticed in the newspaper. That's a political judgment, but it shouldn't be a mandate that you do it.
Go ahead.
Chairman, I think one of the few things, not a few, but one of the things was that to add to the charter the ability to remove a commissioner for just cause. That was not in there, that we have on the list. Another one was that there is a requirement for you to be a West Haven resident to be on a commissioner. The mayor had given an example that a commissioner had moved out of the city but would not resign their position.
There was a commissioner on the Energy Commission that had told the mayor that he had moved out of the city, and she found that to be inconsistent with the requirements of seating the Energy Commission, and subsequently that commissioner was removed. Many municipalities have been operating under that residency requirement. Some of them, they find it hamstringing, and some of them undo that. That doesn't mean that it's for everybody, but some of them, larger neighbors than yours right here, have looked at it as a means to attract wider talent to run the departments, but also to sit on the commissions.
I don't have an opinion either way. I just know that was something
Right.
she wanted us to.
Yeah, I don't either. I think sometimes it's commission specific as to who you want, but let's say a commission that has some type of heightened expertise. Well, you may not have those people that live in the municipality that are able to give that type of time, right? You may want somebody who has an expert level that lives in a different community, but is willing to give that level of expertise. In that case, it makes sense. You just have to kind of look at those things.
In Hartford, for example, the Pension Commission has an actuarial requirement to have an actuary on the Pension Commission, and they have not for 40 years been able to find a Hartford resident who is an actuarial expert, so they've gone outside, and we're just fixing that issue. But there's ways to do that. The general rule would probably be being an elector. I tend to tie it into elector, being an elector in the community, except for teen appointees. They could be residents because they're not electors. But you can create a prophylactic in the document that allows for alteration of the general rule by ordinance. So that's the way you can address it. You can establish a general rule and have a provision that allows for an ordinance that can create exceptions to the rule. That's what we have in the Hartford Charter, for example.
Thank you. I think the other recall, there's language in the charter that talks about petitioning, and she had just mentioned that maybe some municipalities have the ability to recall.
Let me pitch this to the resident expert, because we're lucky to have Attorney Mednick. He can speak chapter and verse on this and inform you not only what he thinks, but really what the state law is on this right now.
Well, I argue this at the Supreme Court, and recall is illegal in the state of Connecticut except in 5 communities. Again, remember I told you at the first session, express grants of authority. There's no express grant. I might have even talked about recall. There's no express grant of authority for recall in the state of Connecticut. It's for 5 communities. New Haven's one of them. We have a limited recall provision in New Haven. But unless you have state authority for recall, you cannot recall an elected official. Pretty simple.
And to be glib, for anybody who's watching at home, there is built-in recall, right? We have them November, the first Tuesday in November. So if you don't like it, you can recall somebody on the first Tuesday in November.
Right, and so My understanding is that we were just asked to look at it because somewhere in the charter it talks about getting a petition to be able to recall. That was my understanding of what the mayor was saying. I'm sorry if I wasn't.
Okay, we'll take it.
Yeah,
Take a
so-
look at it.
Okay.
If it's in there, you probably should take it out unless there's a special act. I don't think West Haven. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. I don't think West Haven is one of the 5 towns that has a special act, so we'd have to look at that.
And this came up 3 councils ago, right? So, an initiative. So initiative on C39.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
The electors shall have the power to propose to the city council any ordinance or resolution appointing or removing officials.
Yeah, that we may have to look at that because there's no authority for that.
And I think that's what we were told at the time, so.
That's the power of initiative. Here it is. I see it. Yeah.
Another thing, Chairman, is that I know there's going to be discussions about term extensions to the 4 years. The one thing that I just want to just say everyone moves to 4 years, just that
Yeah.
we decide that. The one thing,
elected.
officials, thank you for clarifying for me, because I'm assuming everyone knows what I'm talking about. But the elected officials to go to 4 years. The one thing I want to mention while I'm thinking about it is that currently the Board of Ed is staggered in their elections, and I believe I was told when I inquired as to how that started or why that was, is that so there's a transfer of knowledge that we don't just, in the event they all were voted out, that knowledge and that experience wouldn't be gone overnight. So I just want to mention that. So there's something that we're thinking about, and how that would change if that if we were to switch all of that, we would have to think about how we would have to align the Board of Education to what we're choosing to do, because it would no longer be staggered.
Okay.
And if I may,
Yes.
Chair, so again, this is number 2 actually in terms of one of the themes that bubbled up to the top with this assessment, and essentially it's to move to a 4-year mayoral term and a 4-year staggered council term to that point, so that you're not having potentially an entire council be new, along with a potential new mayor. And, I think that, as you're saying, it also makes sense to make sure that the Board of Education aligns with that as well. Yeah.
If I can
Okay.
interject here. Town of Ansonia just had that in November. They have
I'm
a new
sorry,
mayor- Town of
Ansonia?
Ansonia. They have all new aldermen and a new mayor as of this past November. So they ran into that issue.
Well, there's a way to do it where you stagger it. I call it Olympic style. So 4-year terms can apply across the board, but every 2 years will be an executive election, and then the 2 years after that, the council legislative election, right?
He got to it before I did.
I did.
Yeah.
Also, John Carano, Commissioner of Human Resources. I sent it to everybody. I don't know if I sent it to Kevin and Steve. He had some suggestions about human resources, change the community services throughout, remove child and adult daycare center. They don't have those any longer. And Part C, change elderly services to senior services throughout. So I consider that under cleanup language.
Yeah. That would be clerical and administrative.
Yeah.
That doesn't change the function, the structure, or the powers of that
Right.
department in any way.
Okay. And I'm going to say the items that were just brought up, we'll make that item number 13. And I'd like to just go through these just to make sure we're correct in what we chose. Item number 1 for continued discussion is the changing the mayor's term from 2 to 4 years. Item number 2 would be the city clerk and tax collector from 2 to 4 years. Item 3, special election provisions for vacancy of the mayor's spot. Item 4, language for council approval of certain contracts over 100K. Items 5, 6, 7, and 8 would be item 5. That's strengthening the language and throughout all departments for following procedures in the charter. Item 6 would be take out the requirement for voting machines. Item 7 was dealt with modern civil preparedness and emergency management and defining the participants involved. Item 8 is cleanup language and some titles that would go along with what human resource comments are. Also, revised public health for regionalization is under that. Item 9, we have remove mandates that require a certain position, same for mandated departments. 10, regarding the Library Village Improvement Association. 11, administrative remedies for not following the charter. 12, language for acting and chair for city council in succession of. And 13 would be the items that we just recently talked about. So that's what I have. We've pared this down from 23 to 13. I have 13 items that we'll continue to discuss going forward. Anybody have anything else to add to the list?
I have
Go
one
ahead,
thing that I
Kevin.
want to address quickly. Dr. Perry had used AI. Thank you for engaging new technology on old documents.
Yes.
One of the things in the report that she sent to us, number 5, gendered and outdated language. I just wanted to bring this to the attention of this body. I'll also tell the mayor, who I'm sure is watching on YouTube, hi, Mayor, and the council. Extensive use of he, him pronoun language throughout the charter. And the opening clause attempts to compensate but is outdated. So what is that opening clause? The outmoded use of specific pronouns is throughout in all the provisions. This was attempted to be dealt with and addressed up front, and the very first page of the charter says, throughout the city of the charter of the city charter of the city of West Haven, words importing the masculine gender may be applied to females, and words importing the feminine gender may be applied to males. Whenever a title which denotes gender is applied to an individual, the title shall suit the gender of the individual. From a strictly legal and legislative construction perspective, that can be satisfactory. That's not necessarily responsive to the electors, the communities, your constituents that have asked you to take things up, right? So if you hear me, or maybe Attorney Mednick, tell you that may not be necessary or what you have is sufficient, we're talking about from a legal and governance standpoint, right? You all, for better or worse, are charged with more than just that, right? And that's not specific to only this, but because in my charter section, it says, Corp Counsel, he shall, he shall, he shall. It came to my attention. And then when I saw it in Dr. Perry's report, I realized, okay, let's talk about this, because the charter had meant to deal with this before, and it may have, strictly from a statutory construction standpoint. That may not be enough for you now, right? I leave my opinion out of it, but just to bring that to your attention, just because you hear me say, well, you do have a provision that addresses this, doesn't necessarily mean it's responsive to the way you want to address it.
Can I just say that most of the charters I've worked on, we have not worked toward, we have actually achieved gender neutrality. We've taken pronouns out for the most part. One of the concerns I have about the time frame that we have here is that's a big job, a big editing job, and we can do it. And as long as everybody understands that that might be an ongoing process that'll take place after your draft report goes over to the council. While it's at the council, we can continue to edit. It's the kind of thing that really does take a lot of time. I mean, it sounds like it's as simple as doing a find and replace, but it's not that simple because you have to restructure sentences. It really is a big edit job, but it's one I just completed for Weston. And all my charters have gone. I don't think I have any charters that are not gender neutral at this point. But it's a massive edit job. And the Corp Counsel is correct, I think, from a construction perspective. It's covered, but from the perspective of what people look at when they see the document, it's not it's not from that perspective. And so, you know, if you want to do that, we would both endeavor. I don't want to speak for him, but we will endeavor to do that. But I think it's more likely that it'll take place over the course of the transition.
Yes.
If the council is inclined to accept your report as it is, one of the things we might say in the report is that we endorse gender neutrality and urge the council to during their process to continue the process of editing and allowing for gender neutrality. Now, one of the other things we do in all of my resolutions is we usually authorize the Corp Council and Commission Council or Charter Council to continue edits, to work on erratas, to work on those types of things. And so if you approve the concept of gender neutrality and we're not quite done, it may not get done until it gets to the council, but it will get done if that's where you want to go. It's a project, but it's achievable.
Okay.
May
Thank
I
you.
just comment on that? Number one, thank you for bringing that up. Again, with the use of AI, that was it raises to number 9. In addition to what we already talked about, which is, you know, looking at the departments and those that are obsolete, modernizing them to what we actually do here. So I think that since we have to go through that process already, and we're already looking through the whole document, it would make sense to us for us to also do this.
Yeah, that can be part and
gender
parcel with
neutrality.
updating the language.
Yeah.
And this isn't just to the titles and the names of the departments. That would be the language that's filtered throughout. You have it in front of you. It's a lengthy document. It's doable. It's kind of like pushing a boulder uphill, right? It's not complicated, but it's tough.
Okay. Kevin, can I get some? I don't know. I don't think Steve has a copy of this. Can I
Yeah,
get
sure thing.
a couple of copies?
Definitely.
This is just my draft for the meetings. Again, just for discussion.
Do you have a copy of what you did?
I can resend that as well. I'll
right.
resend it.
I may not be. I'll make sure that was I on that. You know, 'cause I don't recall getting anything.
Yeah. Could you send that out to everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, that'd
Thank
be
you.
wonderful. Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
I had thought, so I thank the attorney as well for bringing that up. I had my assumption was that when we had talked about language, that was part of it, making it gender neutral. Is there a way for us to vote on or agree to do that now, and possibly they could get a head start on fixing what we know we're not going to be touching? Because I had just, like I said, assumed that was what we would be doing. But yeah, so maybe if we make a vote on that tonight, they could get to work tomorrow.
I have no problem with a motion being brought up for that.
I make a motion to allow the attorneys to start gender neutral terminology in the charter.
To be part of our report to the council.
Yes.
To revise the charter in a gender neutral way, so when you send your report over, you're going to be sending them a gender neutral
Yes.
charter.
Yes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll let Kevin know when he gets back. Yes.
That's what happens when
He'll
you
be
leave.
so excited.
We'll just tell them that's what happens when you leave the meeting.
Yeah.
No, I got put in charge. Usually when I leave a meeting is when I get voted to do something.
There was a motion to making the charter gender neutral
Great.
as part of our report. And the motion passed. Okay. So I need a copy back, Kevin.
Oh. It should be all coming
Oh,
around.
sorry.
We're looking at setting the schedule through this
Yeah,
month
again, this was
and
just
end of
my
next.
shot.
This will be
Yep.
Yes, this will be April and May dates.
Yes.
Including that final date for report to the council.
The second public hearing in here somewhere.
Yeah, it was in my head, but yes,
All right.
correct.
No big deal. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll make sure my.
I would say we probably make that the 21st.
Yes. Now, I don't have my calendar with me. Is the actual report date the 28th?
Yes.
So,
No, 29th.
Well, that's-
the 29th.
Okay, I made a meeting for Thursday the 28th, so, I guess that's a meeting we'll say this document is approved to be given to the council.
Yeah, and that's a sufficient time between the only thing is, yes, what you probably need is you probably have a meeting closer to the date of the public hearing so that you can tell us any changes in the document since the public hearing so we can have
It's a
them ready for
public
the
hearing.
28th.
Okay,
So we'll have to think about that.
all right.
And if you don't mind, I want to check my schedule to make sure I could be here
Yes.
those dates as well.
Does anybody have any other suggestions for a meeting on a different day or anything? Is Thursday all right with everyone? It's the best day. Not for you. Okay. What about everybody else? Good? All right.
Chairman, did you add a public hearing date and I missed it?
May 21st.
Oh, the contingency day.
But we may, you know what, maybe we'll switch that to the 14th and then have the 2 weeks to revise. 14th, yep. I don't know if that cuts us too short or not.
I mean,
but
you're cutting yourself very
Yeah,
short.
yeah.
You need to max out your time. There.
Okay.
You may have to put another meeting in at some point, but
all right, well,
let's see how it goes
Yeah.
throughout the process, and then we can finally set those dates.
yeah. Right, yeah. Again, this is just a guide. It can change. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Just so everybody's on board, we don't have to do everything all at once. So we got to have a time frame we have to deal with. So some things that may seem major or minor have to be thought about because we want to get this thing done and passed. And there's another day, another time for some other stuff to be done. But I think the basic thing, we need to prioritize exactly what we want to do.
okay. So the 13 items, we'll start researching and for a discussion next week to try and pare down some more and see where we are after that.
Is there anything specifically that would you like to have as a discussion item? You want to discuss the 4-year term? Do we want to discuss what
Yeah.
was the library issue? I mean,
Sure.
I was just trying to
Yeah,
make sure because I can create for you. I don't think we have time to do the thing I normally do. I normally bring panels of people in who've experienced
Yeah.
4-year terms and 2-year terms. I can develop charts on what the towns look like,
yeah,
what they have. So I've got plenty of background data where we can go through some of those issues. But I think you have to start tackling some of the issues that you know you're going to tackle.
okay.
And
Can everybody stay for continuing discussion? Okay, all right, yeah. Okay, so let's start with the 4-year term.
I was suggesting it for the next meeting because I was going to
No,
bring it. I
well-
was going to bring up backup information to show you the information on how other towns are doing. I wasn't talking about doing it now.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we should just get the list. Going farther in talking.
And discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah,
You mean take this list that we started with today,
Yeah. exactly. Yeah.
replace it with
The
the
13.
new list that you
right.
all come out of this meeting with?
Yes,
And then develop
Okay.
priorities from there.
yeah,
In the meantime, if it's okay with the Corp Council and with the chair, I'll start putting together some charts on some of these issues that I
Great.
think you need to deal with. So-
Okay.
so-
And I can endeavor to get some more information regarding the library and the Village
Great.
Improvement Association.
yes, okay. Any other items to come before us tonight?
If I may, and again, I don't want to press too much on this. I wanted to just kind of, just at the highest level, share what the top 10 themes were that came out of the
Sure.
synthesis of the data.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I'm going to forward that to Attorney Mednick.
Oh,
I don't
good.
know if he originally
I just
saw
asked
it.
for it. Yeah, good.
Okay, I've got it here. I'm going to forward it
Yeah, I'd
as
love
you
to see
do
it.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm just, again, top line, in terms of priority, number one being the governance structure and appointments reform, that there's a heavy reliance on the political party quotas. This is something that we didn't talk about, and that there's a lack of clear qualifications or accountability in terms of overall. The recommended change here is to replace the rigid party quotas with a balanced representation and professional qualifications versus worrying about the party. And that this would require the city council to confirm any key appointments, and a clear removal of processes tied to the council's approval. So essentially, consider an independent appointments review panel versus the way that we have it structured
And this is
now.
specific to mayoral appointments
Yes.
across the board.
Yep.
Attorney
Yeah.
Mednick, I think, can speak to that.
The only thing I want to say, you mind if we stop right there? There's one thing I want to point out. They call it the minority party representation. It's actually a cap on majority party representation. That's a state statute. We have to follow that statute. Now, that does not mean you have to appoint Ds and Rs to every commission. You can appoint Us to commissions. You can appoint working families to commissions, the Conservative Party, the Communist Party. You can appoint anybody who is an enrolled voter, an elector in the community. You just have to have a cap on whatever the party is that's in the majority.
I see.
So if it's an R town, the Republicans can only have a bare majority. And if it's a D town, they can only have a majority. But the minority does not have to be the opposition party. It could be unaffiliated. But you have to address a political affiliation. I do have provisions in charters that talk about qualifications. You can't do it for elected officials. You can elect totally unqualified people to hold office. But you can mandate the appointment of qualified people to serve on appointed boards and commissions. So you can establish those kinds of standards.
Which I think we should, because, that's the way you get work done. I mean, to your point, that's why even some towns have people who are from other towns serving in their commissions in order to get things done. So just something to consider.
Can we put qualifications in for department heads?
Of course you can.
We should.
Well, in fact, they are, at least in many of them, certainly mine. I don't know if it's for each and every one of them. Some of them specifically, I'm qualified to do my job. I couldn't be a city planner or an engineer. That has other requirements. So some of them already have that in there. We can take a look and see. But the ability in the charter to mandate that there are requirements shouldn't be specific department by department.
Okay.
I was just going to say the same thing. If you have specific technical requirements, those technical requirements may change from decade to decade.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is have a general standard, have a best practices standard, a qualification standard, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, you can do those things for sure.
Which I believe was something that the mayor also referenced during her public commentary. And I'll be very quick. Number 2, we've already talked about, which is the modernization of the term lengths. And this was not only for the mayoral term, but also the council terms, and we discussed staggered. And I know that Commissioner Hosky also brought up that we need to contemplate the Board of Education with that as well. The next thing here was budget and financial governance reform. Says the key issues is that the mayor's budget can pass by default, and we talked a little bit about that. The council has limited ability to modify the budget and that there's inconsistent financial oversight. The recommendation is to have a simple majority council adjustment within limits to eliminate or revise a default budget approval mechanism. So I'll just stop right there because I know we kind of already talked a little bit about that. Number 4 is ethics and accountability reform. So the key issue here is that ethics oversight is not independent and that there's a lack of enforcement of an enforcement mechanism, and that there needs to be an independent ethics commission. Now, my only question about that is when I just quickly looked at the charter as I was looking at that, it appears that we do have an ethics commission and that they are independent. So that's already in place.
Yeah, you have a member here in this body that can speak to that probably directly, if she'd like to.
That there is an independent ethics commission
Yes.
and with enforcement powers.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's good. We're all set. Another high priority item that was referenced a number of times, and primarily from our mayor, is the Board of Education alignment, and that's something that we need to definitely make sure that we take a look at, that the city is aligned or aligns with the, and defines their accountability, that they are accountable to the city. The sixth item, administrative professionalization. And it says the key issue here is the mayor directly manages operations and there's a lack of administrative separation. I'm not 100% clear in terms of this, if this is a huge priority, but to essentially establish a chief administrative officer so that the mayor is looking at the strategic leadership versus the operational execution of the city. So I'll pause there and just ask whether or not, because that hasn't been brought up, but I'm just curious as to whether or not we would consider that to be
This is something that larger cities have. Steve knows this, because A, there's a lot of business to be done, but B, there's a lot of immediacy to a lot of that business and day to day, and then there's also obviously the longer term planning. As you see here in West Haven, most of that collapses onto the executive. There are not many people who work on the other side of this door. She has chief of staff, but she is essentially de facto CAO and CEO, if you will. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that precludes adding that. You could add that language. I think this is a good opportunity to think about effectively how would we recruit for that position? How would we budget for that position? What responsibilities would that position have? How do we craft a job description that makes sense for West Haven for that position? I don't know that all those things need to get done in charter revision, but some of them would, and you may not have enough time to do that. That's a little bit changing the structure of the government, which is okay. Sometimes that's what charter revision is for. Like I've told you all before, you're doing like 18 months of work in 18 weeks. Less than 18 weeks. This one may be a larger lift, but I agree it's worth discussion and worth looking at. Effectively, how do we pay for it, and how do we recruit for it to get the high-level person that a job like that demands?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just not 100% sure whether or not this is a problem that needs to be solved. It seems like the mayor's very effective, and it seems like she is, and so, but I'm just raising it because it bubbles up to modernization of the charter. Number 7 is procurement and financial controls modernization. So essentially outdated procurement processes, limited transparency, and it would require a competitive bidding threshold, a public contracts database, and an e-procurement system, which I think is, just in my own, my professional life is extremely important for us to consider that. Number 8, transparency and digital governance. We talked about this already, that the outdated form of having things go through the newspapers, in some cases is necessary, but definitely is costly. So just making sure that we ensure that we say that we're establishing the city website as the official platform, and that we're live streaming. And we talked also about the charter language and structural cleanup of the content in terms of gendered, outdated language that's inconsistent. And then I'll just stop at number 10, which is codification of informal practices. The issues here are many practices exist but are not codified, that we need to formalize the acting council chair procedures, the clerk designee roles, and the standard operating procedures. But again, that's number 10. But I think that some of the things, though, that are listed here, we may want to also consider in terms of prioritization.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, can I'd entertain a motion to adjourn? So I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye, thank you. Lonnie, I'm not gonna be here April 23rd.